YouTube. So recently I did a video, a commentary on George Carlin and one of his clips because for whatever reason, YouTube had a couple of his clips show up in my feed as suggestions for me to view. Hadn't really looked at comedy or anything like that. But knowing who Carlin was and this iconic cultural figure he was for so many people, particularly on the left, I decided to do a commentary on one of his clips just to demonstrate the ridiculous nature of someone like George Carlin, the massive level of hypocrisy and just nonsense that is and that comes with a character like him. But as fate would have it, another channel within the last few days picked up a couple of clips or have used a couple of clips of George Carlin, as not in a satirical way, not in a joking way. They're actually using a couple of George Carlin clips in a serious way, as if what he's saying is coming true, and he was Nostradamus and predicting the future when it came to things like fascism and things like that. So the channel that picked it up is the Young Turks, and like George Carlin, the Young Turks are just low-hanging fruit. I'm not going to make this a regular thing. The Young Turks are just a far left, media outlet that just is a little too easy. Commenting on some of this kind of stuff is really boring. So I'm not going to make this a thing. It's just I thought it was a bit of fate that at the same time that I was doing a bit of commentary on some George Carlin videos, that a much bigger channel was doing the same thing, but actually doing it in a serious way, not providing any criticism or anything like that. So I figured today this would be a little fun, kind of in the same theme. But again, this is just like George Carlin. This is low-hanging fruit. This is not really all that intellectually stimulating, but figured it'd be worthwhile to show, like Carlin, that how hypocritical and just ridiculous the Young Turks and news outlets like this can be when they do stuff like this. So we'll go ahead and get this started, and I'll stop the video at various points to kind of go over some of the things that they're trying to say and just show how it's just not, they're not doing that great of a job for the points that they're trying to make.
That I find unusual, and it's not a criticism so much, but his targets are underdogs. And comedy traditionally has picked on people in power, people who abuse their power. Women and gays and immigrants are kind of, to my way of...
So women and gays and immigrants are underdogs. So let me set the stage here for everyone. They're trying to use George Carlin making predictions on Donald Trump as this ridiculous politician who's come along and relating his nature to going after certain groups of people, and they call it Trumpism, and we'll get into it more in the video. But as George Carlin and the Young Turks are kind of honing in on in this first part, within the first few minutes, that women and gays and immigrants are underdogs, and so let's just demonstrate how over the last few decades, how much of an underdog these groups of people are. So if you don't know who the Young Turks are, again, they're a far left media organization, and one of the faces of the Young Turks, one of the co-founders, is this gentleman here, Cenk Uygur, who himself is an immigrant, born March 21st, 1970 in Istanbul, Turkey. He's 53 years old and a co-founder of the Young Turks, widely successful, highly publicized and pushed left-wing media outlet. To my knowledge, the Young Turks, unsurprisingly, have never been kicked off of YouTube. To my knowledge, I don't think they have. They're still there. I don't think they've ever been kicked off of Twitter. Maybe they have, maybe they haven't. But the point is, it's a highly successful left-wing media outlet that was literally co-founded by an immigrant who is now worth millions of dollars. You know, the homosexuals in the United States. Here's the White House. Recently with the rainbow flag and other flags and the rainbow colors being shown on the White House. Not even getting into the fact that every major city around the United States for however long has had Gay Pride Month and parades down the middle of the streets. Which, by the way, the White House having currently a vice president whose parents, Kamala Harris, were immigrants. Here's Kamala Harris. Her mother was an Indian biologist, who came to the United States in 1958 as a 19-year-old grad student. So, just to set the stage of how much of underdogs these groups of people are, that just demonstrating that literally the opposite is true.
Thinking underdogs.
Years later, the late George Carlin's words ring true.
I literally just proved how that's anything but the truth.
Omar has a history of launching vicious anti-Semitic screeds.
Which Ilhan Omar is currently a sitting U.S. congressperson, who herself is also, a product of immigration. Which, by the way, speaking of anti-Semitism, not in a negative sense, but there are tons of Jewish politicians. I want to say a lot of Joe Biden's cabinet are Jews. Janet Yellen is a Jew. I mean, there's tons of non-native, heritage white American people who are in positions of power across the United States.
With no finer example than Trumpism.
Well, I said it a long time ago, we're in a pre-fascist state.
So George Carlin claiming that we're in a fascist state, and leading into Trumpism, and there's Trump holding a Bible, which obviously holding a Bible is a no-no, but fascism. We're currently in a fascist state. Well, what is fascism? What is the definition of fascism? Well, here's fascism right here. Fascism is a far-right, authoritarian, ultra-nationalist political ideology and movement, characterized by a dictatorial leader, centralized autocracy, militarism, yada, yada, yada. Ultra-nationalist political ideology. Nationalism and nation is a word that I did a video on very recently as well, because most people have no idea what that word means, or use the word nation in its appropriate historical context. Ultranationalism is a political ideology based on race and ethnicity. Fascism, who's one of the biggest proponents of the proponent of fascism was Mussolini in Italy, was a nationalist. Fascism is inherently related to nationalism. Donald Trump is not a nationalist. There's no mainstream politician that is a nationalist, Republican, Democrat. Donald Trump is a populist. That is not nationalism. Just because you don't like him, you demonstrate your ignorance of history, words, the meaning of words, what you know, and not even ignorance. Maybe you're just slandering people and dragging them through the mud because you just don't like them at this point. I mean, fascism, we're clearly not in a fascist state. We have a product of immigration as our vice president. Ilhan Omar, who was just mentioned, is a product of immigration. Rashida Tlaib, another congressperson, is a product of immigration. not to mention all of the ethnic Jews that are in positions of leadership in the country. So just completely not true at all that we're in a fascist state. I would even argue that Donald Trump would more than likely decry an actual nationalist, just like pretty much every other establishment politician.
And I said, when fascism comes to America, it will not be wearing jackboots and brown shirts, and it will be wearing Nike sneakers, and it will have smiley face buttons on the Hard Rock.
And carrying a flag.
Yeah, of course.
And a Bible.
Always that. But I've never been comfortable because I'm at heart a lefty.
Once again, these are points made eons ago, alas. Carlin shows the playbook.
Well, the whole point here is that, you know, when fascism comes, it won't be wearing jackboots. It'll come with smiley faces and a Bible, just like how every president on inauguration day, when they get inaugurated, puts their hand on a Bible. But now it's a no-no. You know, obviously Christianity is a no-no. It's increasingly becoming a taboo, a taboo thing in a post-Christian secular society. But I mean, just the ridiculous nature that now when a president holds a Bible, it's a problem, not when they get inaugurated. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's just stupid.
To success, and Trump runs with it.
I think his core audience are young white males who are threatened by these groups. I think.
Remember this: young white males who are threatened by these groups. That's their core audience, and then the Young Turks playing into this as Trumpism and a group stereotyping a group under Trump. So just remember this, because this will come up later in the video.
A lot of these guys aren't sure of their manhood, because that's a problem when you're going in through adolescence.
How would you know that? How would you know that a bunch of young white males are not sure about their manhood? Like, what kind of claim is that?
I don't do Congress the way most people do. I'm the only Democrat in this race.
No.
Could I be? I hope I'm not one of them. And the women who assert themselves and are competent are a threat to these men, and so are immigrants.
Lo and behold.
I mean, just baseless claims. Just baseless claims.
Well, America was certainly great when we valued the nuclear family and family values.
Holy mackerel. Look, what is wrong with valuing the nuclear family and having traditional family values? What is wrong with that? Notice how the Young Turks are using this to label the nuclear family and traditional family values as bad. It's bad if a young white male has those types of values, or those values in general. What kind of immoral nonsense is that?
What would you rather have? 4 years of Donald Trump as a dictator, or 4 more years of Joe Biden as president?
I think I'm choosing Donald Trump as a dictator for 4 more years.
You rather have 4 years of dictator Trump or 4 years of a Biden presidency?
4 years of a dictator Trump.
Yeah, I'm going dictator Trump for sure.
So that's why we as a...
Notice how the context is just the label of the leadership. You know, as if having a moral dictator and moral leadership in government is worse just because of the dictatorial nature of a leader, even though he's moral, than having immoral corrupt democracy. I mean, just notice how just low vibrational nonsense that is. As if the morality and the character of an individual and their view of the people. You know, what if a dictator actually cared about his people more so than fighting wars and sending money to every other country around the world and things like that? What if he actually put his people first? But we would rather have a corrupt democracy who just bled the country dry through taxes and just didn't value the people at all, and rampant corruption abounds and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's just the context is just ridiculous.
An audience then will laugh.
You say we. I don't think you're.
I don't know.
But I think you're
collectively.
I think that's what is at the core of that experience that takes place in these arenas. There's a certain, a sharing of anger and rage at these targets.
A sharing of anger and rage at these targets. Again, this is something that I've gone over with George Carlin in a previous video. George Carlin was a rage drunk. I mean, just where's a look at this. George Carlin addiction. So here's a nice little article about George Carlin. From the Hollywood Reporter. I brought this article up in a previous video. This is September 17th, 2015. George Carlin's daughter describes growing up with comedian. He did coke on our Hawaii vacation. So you go through this article and you can read a particularly haunting story from a trip the Carlins took to Hawaii when Kelly was 11 stands out. The coke was running low, read Kelly. Mom wanted more and argued about every trespass they'd ever committed against each other in their 14 years together. Then Mom picked up a kitchen knife, and Dad did too. I screamed and hurled myself between them. Stop, stop. Please just stop this. Aiming to defuse the altercation, she wrote out a UN-style peace treaty that said, I, George Carlin. Literally, George Carlin's daughter claims that him and his wife almost got into it with knives, and an 11-year-old child had to get in between the two of them so they wouldn't hurt each other. But yet, this is the guy lecturing to, Larry King, who is also the product of immigration, by the way, that about rage and anger. I mean, it's just, again, the hypocrisy knows no limits.
Anger and rage at certain demographics?
Much fun. I love it. I love it. We having a good time? USA.
Yeah, don't chant USA. That's bad.
Knock the crap out of them, would you? Seriously.
Can be seen at a Trump rally near you.
What can also be seen at a Donald Trump rally?
A terrifying night of violence as Donald Trump supporters were attacked by an angry mob waiting for them outside a Trump rally. It happened.
That's not very
in
nice.
San Jose.
Punches actually
The crowd
being
headed
thrown
home,
in this.
They were set upon.
A woman just got hit in the head.
One young woman tried to take them on, proudly showing off her Trump shirt.
She's egging them on.
Then it turned scary. She's hit in the face with watermelon and raw eggs.
Yeah, so, I mean, just hypocrites. Ridiculous hypocrites.
If I fell out of an airplane, I would land on the left side of that line. The difference that I define the difference between right wing and left wing. People to the right of center. Well, let's start with the people to the left. People to the left of center, liberals, Democrats, populists. They're interested in people, human beings, and human values.
Unless you're a Trump supporter, a MAGA supporter, a Christian, a conservative, a heterosexual, a white male. I mean, yeah, until you're one of the demographics they don't like.
People to the right of the line, Republicans and rich people and right wingers.
As if the Obamas aren't rich, or Joe Biden's not rich, or Bernie Sanders isn't a millionaire. It's just ridiculous.
They're interested in property, not people.
What is inherently wrong with valuing property? Why you can't have a coherent, cohesive society if you don't value property? Then you're under communism, whereby the government owns everything. So just inherently caring about property is neither moral or immoral. I mean,
These are big facts from George Carlin.
Anarchy, hatred, chaos, rioting and looting, destruction and arson, riots and lawlessness spread throughout our country. Rioting, looting, vandalism, assaults, and the wanton destruction of property. The crime and the stores being broken into and the looting.
Take the 2020 summer protests. Trump and co. proved it, as they always do.
And they're soulless. They're without soul. They don't really care.
They're soulless and without soul. George Carlin was an atheist. He didn't believe in souls. He doesn't believe conservatives and right-wingers have a soul. He doesn't believe he has a soul. Who cares? What an irrelevant statement.
They don't really care. These Christians don't do Jesus' work, which is to feed the poor and take care of the ones who can't help.
George Carlin literally spent the better part of 30 plus years railing, hammering, mocking, and just going after Christianity, Jesus, Christian institutions, the Bible, on and on and on and on. I mean, of course Christians wouldn't listen to you. You don't know anything about Christianity, and you've spent your entire professional career just hammering on it and mocking it.
That's what their Jesus said. Feed those who haven't.
That's what their Jesus said, who you don't believe in.
No way. To take ones who have nothing going for them. Help them in my name. Don't even want to know about it. Where's that tax return?
It's really rich that George Carlin's bringing up tax returns and I want my money. George Carlin, I had a heart attack in 1982. My arteries are back after 2 angioplasty operations. But the topper was I found out in the early 1980s that I owed the government $3 million in back taxes. George Carlin, who has done stand-up and all this about how conservatives, and right-wingers, they don't care about a baby, after they've been born. They only care about a baby before they're born. But once they're born, conservatives don't care about you. They don't care about your daycare, your health care, your welfare, taking care of you from financial standpoints. Well, allegedly, neither does does George Carlin. It takes taxes to pay for welfare and food and daycare and childcare for children, but he decided not to pay any for a while. I mean, it's just, again, the hypocrisy knows no limits.
I want my what do they call it, the rebate. It's goofy.
And here's the con artist they fall for.
I believe in God. I am Christian. I'm a Protestant. I'm very proud of it. Presbyterian, to be exact. I'm Presbyterian. Boy, that's down the middle of the road, folks, in all fairness.
An Old Testament guy or a New Testament guy?
Probably equal. 2 Corinthians, right? 2 Corinthians 3:17. That's the whole ball game.
I love people as I meet them one by.
I mean, if Trump was any more Christian, allegedly, would the Young Turks like him more? I mean, he is a very churchian type cultural Christian. I mean, if he was any more Christian, the Young Turks in the audience would hate him even more. I mean, that's just weird. It's just weird.
I want people are just wonderful as individuals. You see the whole universe.
Yeah, they're wonderful as individuals until they're an individual with an ideology and presuppositions and things that you don't like.
Their eyes, if you look carefully. But as soon as they begin to group, as soon as they begin to clot, when there are 5 of them or 10, or even groups as small as 2, they begin to change. They sacrifice the beauty of the individual for the sake of the group. I decided it was all under the control of groups.
Yes, groups are bad. It's all about rampant individualism and everybody needs to do their own thing and not think alike or anything like that. Well, you can't have a coherent, cohesive society when you don't think like a group. For example, George, or George fans or Young Turk fans, when George would go around to comedy clubs and people would pay him fiat currency so that he could make a living. We all have to collectively agree as a group, as citizens, as a collective culture, that fiat currency has value and therefore you can exchange it for goods and services. That's groupthink. You cannot have a cohesive, coherent society without groupthink and rampant individualism. That's also getting into libertarianism, which you know, the Young Turks and people like that don't like libertarians. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Now, whether it's business, religion, political people, or what, and I would distance myself from wishing for a good outcome. Let it do what it's going to do, and I'll enjoy it as an entertainment.
And I'll reflect on what it is on its own.
People like me from previous months, okay? Total control. Bing, bing, bong, bong, bing, bing, bing. You know what that is, right?
Are we going to someday elect a satirical president, a guy who really has no intention of having he's doing it as a sales tool?
Kind of like a guy who is just a dimension-riddled puppet who can't speak and has no idea where he is or how to get off stage or if he's shaking anybody's hand or sniffing somebody or doing something. I mean,
for something else?
Well, we're working on it. Power does what it wants. Power does what it wants. And now they're just more naked about it. Now they just put it right out front and say, this is what we're doing to you folks. It's, this country's finished. It's been sliding downhill a long time. And everybody's got...
I actually agree with this point. I think the United States of America as a cohesive political entity is more than likely headed for bad times. I think it's pretty obvious, just being a student of history, it's not looking good. So I actually agree with old George on this point here.
He's got a cell phone that makes pancakes, so they don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to make any trouble. People have been bought off by gizmos and toys in this country, and no one questions things anymore.
I mean, I don't necessarily disagree. I would even expand on that and say that the politicians and the leadership and the influencers in this country have been bought off by the companies who make the gizmos and the technology. Everybody has been bought off, to include the Hollywood elites and the entertainers and the media, yada yada.
All right, so there are many different ways that.
Okay, so before we get into this individual's monologue, let's just demonstrate the well-adjusted nature of some of the leadership at the Young Turks. Just to see how non-angry and loud and yelly they are. So here's the face of one of the faces of the co-founders of the Young Turks. I mean, clearly just a well-adjusted individual.
Call yourself pro-life. You goddamn liars. All of these kids are dead, and you don't want to do a thing about it.
I mean, just clearly calm. I'm not arguing that what he's talking about is there's no emotion, but good Lord. Here's Anna Kasparian, fat shaming and going after Alex Jones. Let's see how well adjusted she is.
You want fucking attention? Get off the stage, you fat fuck! Get off!
Is she trying to tell him not to speak and violating his free speech?
What are you doing? Don't touch my camera! Get the fuck off the stage!
The Saudi Arabians aren't funny enough, you don't see
Hey,
first of all, let me explain something, all right?
No, Jake, relax!
Oh, just clearly well-adjusted, calm, level-headed thinking individuals that the Young Turks has as representation there. So let's see what this fine individual has to say.
People will take this piece, and that is totally, completely fine. Before we get into it, if we missed any story, if you would like to send us a story, get at me on Twitter, on TikTok.
Actually, Rick, I will have a story in the link below of an alleged video of someone who was mentioned in this video, Ilhan Omar, who is is an elected official speaking to a crowd of Somalians, and dare I say, speaking in a nationalistic type of tone, talking about how, their Somalians are related to one another by blood, and they're Somalians first, and she's going to use the power of the United States to help Somalia and help her people. So I would like like a piece on that from the Young Turks. What your opinion on that is, and I'll link it down in my description below there, Rick.
And on Instagram, send me a DM, send me a link, and we'll look into it. How I view this is rather simple. What we have in this current landscape is not that comedians are going on podcasts and hosting their own shows and saying you can't say anything anymore. It's that the audience has evolved. Jokes that would work 50, 30, 10, 5 years ago don't resonate anymore. That's also just how the audience evolves with time. Are the same plays in the NFL going to work over and over again? Maybe one will hit, depending on the game situation. But these are completely different revamped playbooks. These are not fullback dives on the goal line anymore. In addition, when I hear someone like a Bill Maher,
let me also point out, this is just weird, over his right shoulder, if he's looking at us, that would be his right shoulder. The picture of a human figure in red and green, whatever it's doing, is just kind of odd.
complain and kvetch, Yiddish, about how everyone is just too sensitive. No, it's not that we're too sensitive. It's that our tastes have just gotten better. We appreciate more creativity instead of using typical racial stereotypes. In addition,
instead of using typical racial stereotypes, you mean like right? Where is it? Right here? In this very video? I think his core audience are young white males who are threatened by these groups.
Core audience are young white males who are threatened by these groups. The
video goes on a little while longer. This video has already gone on for over 30 minutes, but you get the idea. Just the level of hypocrisy that is, the Young Turks and people who are like George Carlin is just ridiculous. And I'll say again, this is just low-hanging fruit. It really is just kind of boring and not very intellectually stimulating, but to really just drive a point home, because sometimes, like in a previous video I did on George Carlin, for the sake of needing to be addressed, this needed to be addressed. But anyway, hopefully for some, this was a bit entertaining. I did have a little fun doing this, but I'm not really going to try to do much of this anytime soon, but I appreciate it. Like and subscribe.